Hi, welcome back to our series. So this time, me and Mate have prepared some very exciting stuff for you, and we call this the four-part series of intuition. So we had a discussion earlier about what could give value to coaches, leaders around the world from our discussions, and I think one of the things that came to mind was this idea of intuition. So Mate, can you share with us a little bit about how this came about this topic of intuition?
Hmm, nice. Um, Actually, sometimes even myself, I would doubt my assumption, or I would have some assumption when I have conversation with my client. I would have some flirts or some assumption or even judgment of like hearing what client is saying or not saying, right? Like body language or just sharing. And but my, let's say, critical thinker, my logical self would actually sometimes say, "Oh no, probably is not that," or "Oh, you shouldn't go there," with question or something.
Mm,
However, there is something somewhere not really logical that have this flirt with this, let's say, I want to ask something around that area. I somehow feel that I experienced it somewhere, or I would call that kind of intuition where you don't really know on logical level
mm,
why do you want to go there or something along that line. So some people say trust your nose or trust your gut, and we all know that when we talk about gut, we are talking about our emotions, and
mm.
that is stored in our subconscious somewhere, and that is what intuition is, right?
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting because, like, oftentimes this word intuition, we say, "Oh, I'm trusting my intuition, trusting my gut, I'm trusting my sixth sense, I'm trusting this," and we say, "Oh," and sometimes when it doesn't happen, the way we kind of anticipate, we think that, "Oh, something's wrong with my intuition," and so I thought it was a really good topic to kind of talk about: should leaders, should coaches trust their intuition, and what is intuition about? So, we segmentize this video series into four parts. We're going to talk about first what is intuition and what it means in coaching. And in the next part two, we're going to talk about why trust your intuition. In part three, we're going to talk about why not trust intuition. And in part four, it's very exciting. What's the difference between intuition and ego? So let's start first by exploring a bit of what is intuition about, and then we make some relevance into coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I remember I was reading something about Carl Jung
Mm,
a while ago, and they asked him, "How would you describe intuition?" And I really like what he said. He said, "It's a perception from unconsciousness." Right? If we have our like logical side and, let's say, creative, conscious part of self, and then we have this unconscious, like deep down, and like I said, these flirts from there, addressing, have perception from there. That's how he said.
mm.
What do you think? How would you describe intuition?
Well, I think for me, intuition, there are different layers. For me, intuition, it's like the unconscious, conscious part of you, where your experience, for example, it comes from a place where you had that wealth of experience, almost as if it's like your second nature. Right, the other part of you that is not so conscious in the moment, not so conscious in the moment, but unconscious, and you have this kind of like spatial awareness, knowing where it's activated because you have been trained or you have had experience. So I would say, for example, coming from my background in the military, we've been trained and conditioned to have develop high situational awareness, spatial orientation. So especially in flight, when you're having uh, different dimensions, up, down, left, right. So you have the sagittal plane and the horizontal, vertical plane. So you tend to not know which direction you are in the spatial, right? So in a two-dimension plane, front, back, but in a three-dimension plane, front, back, up, down. So you, especially when there's fog that comes in, you can't really see what's ahead of you. So because you can't see what's ahead of you, most pilots will tend to either swerve or they'll trust the instruments. And sometimes when you trust the instruments, we don't know what's up, what's down. and it's a split second. It just takes a split second, and you find yourself launching into the mountains. You find yourself launching into the ground because you thought you were pulling up, but by pulling up, you're actually hitting the ground. So you're really facing the ground and hitting right into it. So, however, when we kind of trust our intuition, there's this like gut sense because of our experience, because of our conditioning, because of this, we have that third, six, seven, eight, nine sense that comes in and kicks in and say, I think there's something more. There's something hidden there. There's something there you should can explore. Or sometimes our intuition kind of help us to avoid dangers. So I would say it's that trained conscious part of us that used to be very conscious at the forefront that has now become an unconscious part of us, which is contributing and supporting us in the areas that we're doing.
Yes, yes. Um, of course, like it's so good that we put this into for serious, because in next one we can talk about like then why to trust intuition, right?
Mm.
Why to trust this autopilot or this trained self, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So I was kind of interesting, So before our session, I kind of check up the dictionary definition of it, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's kind of interesting for us to kind of read it. So let me just read to you a little bit of the dictionary's definition of intuition,
Yes, yes, please.
which is kind of interesting. So dictionary kind of .com defines definitions intuition as the ability to understand something instinctively without the need for conscious reasoning. So there's this idea of conscious reasoning, and there's this idea of uh, the moment in the moment, instinctively, like there's an instinct that comes in. So, and the key word here is without the need for conscious reasoning.
Uh-huh.
So I guess this is where you could say it's like your instinct, your gut sense, because sometimes we cannot take too much time when facing something, and you have to make the decision on the spot. And you just got to trust the gut, trust intuition. And so I think it's going to be something really interesting for us to explore as we go into the relevance in coaching as well. So I'm kind of curious because Matej, you had many years of experience in performance coaching, and so how and what is intuition in that cases in those cases?
Nice. Um, as I said, it's an autopilot. It's a as we train 1,000 times a movement for 1,000 times, and then the lights are on. Then you go on the tournament to perform that, and then there are like thoughts. There are thoughts. Oh, am I good enough?
Hmm.
Oh, am I gonna disappoint my people that watch me? Am I gonna get the next contract with the next club? So on and so forth. If you don't perform, somebody else will.
Hmm.
So there is many negative thoughts that comes in to their brain. That is when actually you get distracted. So then you need to start. You go on often. You go on autopilot. You literally go on autopilot.
Hmm.
But then if you did something for 10,000 times, you should and you can trust your intuition. You can trust your autopilot. And same thing in coaching. When I'm like observing a person and like, okay, this one will be very obvious, but if somebody is talking about something like, my girlfriend left me, it's like you are laughing, but I know that there is something behind it. You shouldn't laugh, right? But this one was very obvious. But very often things are not obvious.
Hmm.
And then you are like, on logical side or logical level, you don't dare to go there. But
Hmm.
actually, your intuition wants to go there, kind of. You have this flirt to go there, right? So that's the place of
In,
conscious, no conscious.
hmm. So what I'm hearing you share, it's like the intuition. It's this place of there's this experience, this sort of expertise, but it's just coming in as things are being activated, or you're becoming more aware of in those moments. And I think it's kind of interesting when you mentioned that in intuition, it's a lot about that being conditioned in that space, and yet it's coming forth. and it only can come if you have proper training or proper experience. I think just like performance, performing athletes as well. Athletes at a peak performance, they don't think about step one, step two, step three, right? They intuitively know what to
Mhm.
do. And so it always amazed me, like when I watch the divers, how they move to the edge of the board, do the hops and then dive. And I just wonder, okay, if they make a mistake, they might slip into the pool,
Yes.
right? Yeah, and then or they might hit the head against the board. So they must have known like how much to jump, how much force to jump, to instinctively know when to lift off,
Yes.
and really much like the gymnasts as well, when they are running really really fast, doing those somersaults and gymnastics, right? It's always very very fascinating to watch. Like wow, the precision, but yet it feels sometimes like watching like a performance, like a artistry, but it's highly technical, it's very very challenging. Even though it's just like for a moment for them to tumble across, but it took them many 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 years to
Yes.
achieve that kind of level of intuition. Mm.
Yes. Exactly. Many,
Yeah.
many years of like just of experience. So I don't know, is it very simple or like too simple to say that I think intuition comes
Hmm.
from experience itself?
Yeah. 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 So I guess the next question that will kind of lead us to it's the next part of the session, right? So in this part of the our next series portion, I think it's really really interesting to explore why trust your intuition at all.